Welcome back to the show. I'm here with Patrick Quinn from Webapper and the Lucee Association of Switzerland, and we're going to be looking at the challenges of AWS managed Lucee CFML hosting, doing things in the cloud that you used to do on a server, and all the clever stuff that he's been doing at Webapper with that. Also, how they have moved their focus from Adobe ColdFusion to Lucee CFML and why they did that. And as he's the product manager, global product manager, I'm sorry, Patrick, I've got to get your title right there because I know you know, it's far more important being the global project manager for Lucee.
Of course.
What's exciting about Lucee coming up in the coming year? And we'll also briefly mention some CFML secrets you can use for high performance on the cloud, because CFML has been upgraded and now works on cloud versions of ColdFusion. So we'll mention that as well. So welcome, Patrick.
Thank you, Michael. Great to be with you as always.
Yes, good seeing you. So you've moved to doing AWS managed Lucee hosting, and what are the challenges you had to deal with in doing that? Because it could be quite complicated to get it right.
Right, so the first challenge was just picking that, meaning managed hosting in the Amazon cloud, or we also offer consulting and support services to customers who are already in the Amazon cloud. But you know, we've been doing ColdFusion consulting since the very beginning. Our co-founder, Mike Brunt, has support emails from Jeremy Allaire on a hard drive somewhere. And he was with the platform before it was even called CFML, back when it was called DBML, Database Markup Language. And then, of course, you know, all of us here at Webapper, we all worked at Allaire together. That's where we met. Myself, our co-founder, Mike, Daryl, the chief architect of CFusion, Matt Stavanis, our VP, and lots of other people who've been at Webapper over the years. So, you know, and we did that consulting work for Allaire. That was really the first ColdFusion consulting in the world, continued under Macromedia, and then we started Webapper after the Macromedia days. And it's been since 2001 we've been doing this. So we were just doing hundreds and hundreds of ColdFusion consulting and support and development engagements. And that was great. And then around about the time that I personally had completed my 500th ColdFusion project under the Webapper umbrella, I started thinking more seriously about that CEO title I have instead of just being the developer who happens to sign the paychecks. And so we started thinking about what's next, what would be a next generation move, strategic move for our company. And so we've been partnering with a lot of traditional hosting companies over the years. We brought in professional services for a lot of the ColdFusion hosting companies. And we started looking more and more at the Amazon cloud, first for our own machinery, and then just to maybe provide this as an offering. And then that's when the light bulb went off and we realized, wow, we can actually be a managed hosting provider and we can control the entire system, no middleman at all. So that was really exciting to us. And we started that effort in 2012, and then we started really accelerating that effort about 2-3 years ago, got deeper into the Amazon Partner Program, and there's a lot of certifications that are required. It's a really legitimate certification and training program for the Amazon partners. So we got through all of that, and so we could make sure that we had a really bona fide offering. And so then the option for us was to be able to move ColdFusion customers into the cloud. So we'll talk more about Lucee a little bit here, but the big challenge was just that, was moving these, because of course, ColdFusion is the ultimate monolith, right? So we hear about monolith applications as compared to cloud design patterned applications and microservices and serverless and headless applications and all these new patterns and strategies. Well, but ColdFusion systems are these monolith web applications that have been built by the tens of thousands or more over many, many years. And that's true of our customer base too. So as far as the challenges goes, the first challenge is, first of all, making sure that we were fully qualified to do that. So we checked that off the list. Then the second thing was moving these systems into the cloud and trying to cloudify them along the way. Now, the truth of the matter is, a lot of the customers that we move into the cloud, whether they stay on Adobe ColdFusion, which many of our customers do, or whether they migrate to Lucee, which we certainly help customers do as well. The fact is that most of them are lift and shift migrations. So we're applying cloud design patterns wherever possible, microservices and these sorts of things. But the majority of the systems are still lifted and shifted, as the saying goes, meaning they're application server based and they're database server based. And so we're still dealing with servers more so than services, but it's still an improvement. The Amazon cloud, in our opinion, is the most sophisticated hosting system on earth. It's almost unbelievable the things that can be achieved, far more than any traditional data centers or physical machinery data centers. So even just getting in there with an old-fashioned web application is still a big improvement, and then you're in a great position to be able to continue to cloudify and modernize those applications. And so we are always working on that with our customers gradually along the way. And so I'd say that's the first big challenge. And then the rest of the challenge is just AWS is a complicated system, so you really have to be on top of it all the time. And because it's so complicated, there are just so many variations on how it can be set up, and you have to carefully set everything up so that you're properly monitored. And there's some myths about cloud hosting, and Amazon's in particular, that as long as you're in the cloud, everything is magically redundant, magically scalable. Not at all the case. And so you have to build almost all that stuff in there. And so that's another one of the challenges that we stay focused on.
So you mentioned some amazing features that are in AWS. What are one or two of the things that really blew your socks off when you started using it?
Yeah, I would say the intelligent scaling is the most, certainly early on, it was the most interesting feature to us. We've been getting more and more into containerization and cloud design patterns, Dockerization and so forth, but also microservices architectures. All that stuff is all fine and good, but one of the first things that caught our attention was auto-scaling. That's the term in the Amazon cloud. So what this means is that the monitoring systems not just only intelligently monitor the systems, and typically the monitoring in Amazon is much more in depth than monitoring you'll find in traditional data centers. A lot of data center providers are actually implementing, better monitoring software systems, but Amazon's, in our opinion, is the best. And so not only is it intelligent monitoring, it's much more proactive monitoring. It can kill troubled servers, but also just automatically provision new servers. And again, there's some setup that you have to do.
When you say that word provisioning a new server, I get this nervous feeling that it's going to take weeks to do. What kind of time scale does it take to provision a server?
At one point, when we still had some of our hosting partnerships in place, we were on a phone call as a partner to the hosting company. The company shall remain nameless, but one of the account managers actually said on the call that it'll take 3 months to get that new server for you being the customer in this case, and we were going to set it up, ColdFusion server for the customer. That was one of those moments where we just said, okay, finally, this is too much. We can't do this anymore. Right, so the provisioning of additional server capacity is automatic, or it's automatic if you set it up that way. It's as instantaneous as new server provisioning can get, minutes, and that sort of thing. So having your server infrastructure scale without manual intervention is, it's certainly compared to traditional data centers, that's an almost magical capability. There's a bunch of other stuff that goes along with that. The automatic scaling of the storage network. So generally speaking, storage is automatically scalable inside Amazon in particular. If your main storage tier is the S3 service. We do a lot with customers. Based on our long history with ColdFusion, we're performance engineering experts, right? So we have a lot of customers who come to us with pretty high traffic systems. So the CDN, which is called CloudFront, that's the name of the Amazon service, that is another system where the caching and the delivery of the assets and the optimization out to the edge locations around the worldwide network, all of that is automatic. So one of the great things about Amazon is that it is complicated, and you do have to have depth to run systems, especially complicated systems or high traffic systems, but you get so much from Amazon. They are constantly iterating on that product, and they are constantly improving it. And a lot of times the improvements are in the form of price too. They'll just deliver you price reductions. And of course we pass those right along to our customers. So the technology, I can't say enough about it. I mean, at Webapper, we've been in literally hundreds of data centers over the years amongst our customer base all over the world, whether that was virtually or physically in person. And that was the thing that really stood out to us the most by way of comparison. We'd seen all of that data center machinery, much of which was impressive stuff for what it was. But then when we saw what was possible with Amazon, one more topic I'll throw out. is geographical distribution of systems. So in Amazon, it's almost trivial to have a ColdFusion server over here and another ColdFusion server 3 blocks away, separate backbones to the internet, separate power supplies, separate physical buildings. Those are called availability zones in the Amazon cloud. It's almost trivial to achieve that even for the database. We have replicated databases set up for customers, and the two replication servers are in separate physical locations. But it's entirely seamless as far as the application is concerned, and of course, as far as the users are concerned. So in traditional hosting infrastructures, that is incredibly expensive to implement, and Amazon makes it much easier and much cheaper. So that was another one of the specifics that caught our eye.
That sounds really cool, and the future of where web apps are going. So it's great that you're spearheading this Webapper and getting Lucee into this as well. So I know you started off, as you said, in a layer, and you were big in Adobe ColdFusion for a lot of years, and you still do that stuff, but you've moved your focus to Lucee CFML. Tell us about that story and how you made that move.
Yeah, so the first, in figuring out what to do next as a company, instead of just one more ColdFusion consulting engagement after another, and we had done, again, more than 500 when the light bulb went off that I should start to think about something else. The first thing we needed was some kind of foundational service, and that was Amazon Web Services, and I already described how we got deep into that. But alongside that, we felt like we wanted some other offering as far as the platform that runs on top of the hosting infrastructure, right? So we had been fighting the good fight for Adobe ColdFusion, going all the way back to the mothership. We worked there. We've been the loudest and proudest evangelists for many, many years. And we're still proponents of Adobe ColdFusion. Of course, we're happy to see things like Alicia was just on stage at the CFML Objective conference last week, talking about that 10-year roadmap for the Adobe ColdFusion product. Love seeing that, but we wanted something else. We wanted to have another option for our customers. We had been hearing the talk about more and more companies, of course, with our huge customer base, including our CFusion customers, hearing more and more customers talking about moving off the platform or already deciding on their own to move to what was Rilo and now Lucee, the free open source version of ColdFusion. So also in the Amazon cloud, though, I would argue that Adobe ColdFusion's a little awkward for the Amazon cloud. The pricing model in particular is not that cloud friendly. If you want to scale large, high traffic systems, it's going to be quite expensive to run Adobe ColdFusion in the cloud. And that bothered us.
I've never seen the pricing model for cloud-based Adobe ColdFusion. What exactly is that? Because I've looked for it.
Yes, right. Well, unfortunately, we could do a whole other podcast on reading the EULA, the ColdFusion end user license agreement. Anyway, a lot of this is buried in the details. There are two ways to license Adobe ColdFusion in the cloud. They have an official AMI, that stands for Amazon Machine Image, and that's license included. And that's just a pre-built server with Adobe ColdFusion installed and licensed, and you spin that up, and for every hour that you're running that, you're paying an hourly fee, but that's a sliding scale price. So as with traditional Adobe ColdFusion licenses, your price will scale up with the size of your machinery or with the number of servers that you're running. Well, we just knew that once we got into the Amazon cloud with our customer base and our reputation for performance, we were going to have a lot of customers coming to us saying, we need N-scale systems. We need systems that might have a base of 10 CFML servers, but they might need to scale to 20 or 30. Well, there again, that is an expensive proposition using Adobe ColdFusion. So we didn't love that, having that as our only platform option for all of our CFML customers. But we also, like a lot of people, if you talk to the member organizations in the Lucee Association Switzerland, they were all very like-minded. We really had, so we love CFML as a platform. We love the CFML language as a tool. And despite all of us advancing in age and experience and maybe gray hair, except for me, teasing. I don't have many talents, so I have to tease about the only advantage I have, which is not much gray hair. Anyway, but we're like-minded in wanting to have a platform that we can control the destiny of. And so, of course, you can't really do that with a proprietary corporate software package like Adobe ColdFusion, but there's every opportunity in the world to do that for an open source software project. Anyone can join a FOSS project and roll up sleeves and get some work done. So for financial reasons, for scaling reasons, but also just for controlling our destiny reasons, we made the decision to become financial and technical stewards of Lucee. That was Rilo still just as it was just transitioning to Lucee as we got involved. There was a fork there and a rebranding. And I met with Gert and Misha in Los Angeles, I remember. And we hit it off right away. We had known of these guys over the years, just had never really taken a formal step in this direction. So we did, and we put our money, we're monthly financial supporters. That's what it means to be a member. Members all contribute financially every month to Lucee's budget and paying for the development team, of course, and marketing and all the things you need to do. And then we went a little farther than that. Then I got onto the management board of directors. It's a Swiss-based nonprofit. That's the corporate steward, the corporate owner of Lucee. Excuse me. And so like any nonprofit, it has a management board of directors. So I'm on the management board of directors myself as the head of Webapper. And then that management board elected me the product manager. It's the global product manager because it's outside the US, right? So that's how I get to say global. So that's product manager over the everyday development team. And so I really felt that was important. We have a huge customer base. We have well over 1,000 customers. I think it's 1,500 individual customers. We've worked with companies and organizations, large and small, over the years. And I felt it was really important that if we were going to be saying, you should move your systems to Lucee, that we had a really strong role in it and a really firm commitment to it. So that's why we joined the Lucee Association of Switzerland, LAS. We became financial and technical supporters. And then we also got ourselves involved in that product manager role for the low price of $0.00 per hour. You too can suffer.
Yeah, I was going to say, as global product manager, you get a higher salary, but you get paid nothing.
It is. It's double. It's double the base salary, which is $0. So there you go.
Well, I'm sure everyone in the CFML world appreciates you leading the product management there, because without someone to take charge of where the product's going and keep things moving along, and I think didn't you introduce the monthly releases, or was that?
Yes, that was my first contribution. I wanted to see a consistent and published release cycle. In general, we need to just be a lot more transparent about things. It's very difficult when you have an almost entirely volunteer organization. Certainly the management structure is all volunteer, and all these member organizations these are some of the most successful companies in the CFML world. And so these are all developer, owner, entrepreneur types like Jeff Bowers at Demon Software of Australia. One of the leading lights in the entire history of the CFML movement. And that's just a really busy guy, along with all the other people who work at the member organizations who support Lucee. So it can be hard to get things in shape organizationally. And the technical side of getting in shape organizationally, of course, is making sure that the development process is rock solid. And that's everything from build automation and DevOps tooling and all that good stuff, and test-driven development and automated testing, and then test coverage to make sure your test coverage, your code coverage is good with your tests, and all of those things. But also a big part of it is communication and having a published release schedule that you stick to. And so over time, not only does that crank out a lot more functionality and a lot more stability and performance and all the things that you get, when you're cutting code every day, but it builds confidence in the platform too, which is really, really important, because of course, as we move more members into the membership to become paid supporters of Lucee, but also along with that, as we recruit bigger and more complicated systems, rightly so, those organizations are going to be kicking the tires on all these things, and we of course want to have good answers for all the questions they ask us. So that's what we're doing.
I know one of the questions on my mind with Lucee is, how do you deal with security issues? Because that's something that Adobe has taken a good lead on, being public about security issues in ColdFusion and issuing hotfixes very quickly. So how do you deal with it at Lucee when you find a security issue?
Yeah, so security vulnerabilities are always the top priority. Of course, anytime you're making tools that other people use to make software, and hopefully it translates into lots and lots of software. We have a responsibility, of course, to make sure that that development platform is really secure. So, and I agree, Adobe's done a much improved job in recent years about being really quickly on top of those sorts of things and communicating about it. We've always been on top of it. And in fact, our responsiveness was even better than our communication about our responsiveness. So we, you know, we can get patches out same day, same hour. And the build process is a very solid build process. Confirm it, we can have a patch out in an hour. Yes, so we were just talking about security there. So vulnerabilities are always the top priority. The way it works in terms of the everyday development process is that we have the monthly sprint, and the monthly sprint is almost entirely enhancements and fixes. Those are all dot releases or release versions of Lucee. It's the 3-part version number. So 5.2.2 is the next version of Lucee that'll come on. 5.2.1 is the current stable version. So, and then one or two times throughout the year, we'll do a minor version release, which the current one is 5.2. We released that in June. And that's where we're actually adding some new functionality. And so we mostly follow the semantic versioning. Anyway, the point I was making, though, is that we have the monthly sprint, and that produces monthly releases of Lucee, but we always have time in our development schedule set aside for other things. Sometimes these other things are sponsored fixes. So that's one of the important things about Lucee. Anytime you're burning for any kind of a fix or an extension or anything like that, you can actually pay on a per feature or per fix basis and get your particular Lucee need right to the top of the priority list. So in terms of our development schedule, we leave aside time for that, but also part of that set aside development time every month is for any urgent reaction to security vulnerabilities. So for the most part, this has always been true of Lucee, even back when it was Rilo. We just didn't communicate about it very well. It's still true now, but we're a little better organized in terms of our time management on the development team, and now we're communicating better about it. We've worked with some of the security pros in the community to make sure they're holding our feet to the fire on that, like Pete Freetag. You know, he does a lot of CFML security consulting, so we've worked with him on it and others too. So anyway, that's do you know if Pete's tools can check Lucee servers for security issues as well? I know he has that Hack My CF tool. Yeah, I'm pretty sure we use Hack My CF with both Adobe ColdFusion and Lucee customers. I don't think that it's quite the exact same feature set though, but I'm not entirely sure on that.
All right, well, I'll ask him. I had him on the podcast a while back at the Into the Box conference, so yeah, I'll reach out to him again on that. So what's coming up in Lucee? What's exciting in the Lucee world for the coming year?
Right, so more releases, right? So really smoothing out the release schedule. As we've picked up the pace of releases, of course, we've had some more regressions. And so we knew that was going to happen. And so we're circling back to make sure we smooth that out and make sure that the increased pace of development doesn't, you know, linearly increase the amount of regressions and bugs and all that. So continuing to keep the development process fast and efficient and producing lots of improved releases of Lucee every month. That's just kind of baseline.
What's your secret for having smoother regressions? Do you have some automated testing or some other thing that?
Yeah, we use a lot of build automation, right? So we use Ant and we use unit testing, and Maven is linked in there, and with the repository and all that. So having that kind of stuff in place is really the starting point to you know, having a low regression rate and all that. But you constantly have to massage that stuff. So like, for example, we were just looking at the test coverage for ORM implementation in Lucee, which has been a little less than stellar, to be totally honest, but we spent a lot of time in the current sprint on that to make sure we're supporting the part of the community that uses Orem, and they're a vocal bunch, of course, right? So definitely got to support them. Actually, there are a couple of member organizations that use Orem heavily, and so those folks have been, really pushing those fixes. But the point I was going to make is that once you have all this build automation and test-driven development and automated unit testing and all that good stuff, you have to make sure that your test coverage is good, your code coverage is good, and that your test cases are valid and they're covering all the things that you need to cover to make sure regressions don't happen or new bugs don't pop up or whatever. So we've been doing that. We've been improving our unit testing and our test cases and all that. Other exciting things are publishing more about the Lucee roadmap. So next up, in terms of minor version release, will be 5.3. And we have an internal Lucee roadmap. And so we're constantly trying to cull from the broader software engineering world and the cloud engineering world now with brand new application design strategies and approaches like microservices. So we feel like we can really keep pace with that, probably a little better than Adobe ColdFusion because we're nimble and we're small. And we also don't have quite the size of, say, corporate, large multinational, large enterprise organizations, right? With all that installed base for Adobe ColdFusion, they of course have to continue to keep those customers happy, like for example with Microsoft integrations and things like that, things that will just never be a part of Lucee. So that's another way in which we're a little more free to innovate. But anyway, pulling from the Lucee product roadmap, which we attempt to have pull from the broader engineering world to pick the very best practices and so forth from there. So that is both for minor version releases. 5.3 will be the next minor version that comes out, and then 6.0 would be the next one. So in 6.0, we're going to cause all kinds of trouble. When it comes to versioning, generally speaking, the major numbered releases, the major version releases, are often not backwards compatible, right? So 6.0 should be different enough to where that'll be a significant new on-ramp for customer systems that are being built anew on Lucee, and they'll go off into the sunset that way. But it'll also be a big migration effort then from 5.x, or if God forbid, if anyone's still left on Lucee 4.5x, it'll be a big migration. But not only
do you have an estimated date for 6.0 or?
Absolutely not. Let me be clear about that. No, the other point I was going to make is that those are things that are upcoming, but we have to do something in particular as we get the work on the minor version releases and eventually the next major version release, which is 6.0, is we've got to get the community involvement process sort of rebuilt again. There was something called a tag with Rilo, and at the very beginning of Lucee, the technical advisory group. And it's dormant right now, and it's dormant on purpose. We talk about this in pretty much every monthly board meeting and management board meeting. So we have to get that right so that that whole feedback loop between the community and the product team and the roadmap, which is published, and all of that is just one, harmonious, free-flowing process, and it's not fraught with disagreement and all the kinds of things that can happen, especially with open source projects. I mean, if you look at cryptocurrencies, there are like 800 cryptocurrencies now, and each one of those is basically a software team. That's really what a cryptocurrency is. It's a development team. And so a lot of those 800 or so crypto development teams have kind of these same problems. So there's a lot of lessons to be learned there. So we want to make sure we do a better job of publishing what's going to happen with minor version releases and why, and certainly then with major version releases like 6.0, but then also making sure that the community feedback loop is a part of that, and that way we can bring in the best and brightest ideas from our community and build those into both minor version enhancements and as well as new major releases. So it's going to take us a while. If I had to hazard a guess sitting here right now, I'd say that 6.0 is probably a year away, but it could easily be, say, early 2019. I might get in trouble with my fellow LAS cohorts for even saying that much, but just based on, I've been inside the development team every day now since last October or so of 2016. So And it's not my first rodeo as a developer and a development manager. So I have a pretty good sense of what's possible, even for a big lift, like say a Lucee 6.0. But anyway, we're also just trying to be prudent about it all, right? So we want the monthly release schedule, the regular release schedule, to be easily satisfied, easily met as a goal every month or every other month, whatever the current schedule is, and that we're producing really solid releases of Lucee each time. And once we really solidify that, then we'll move over and tackle the bigger things. I should note that we did mix in the 5.2 release. So it was a minor version release in the middle of this monthly release schedule for 2017. And we got some good things in there, but we also learned some lessons. And so we're going to bake those lessons into future minor version releases, 5.3 being the next one. And certainly we're going to be very cautious with the 6.0 release. So yeah, it's very busy. I'd say in my day, it's easily tied for first with the thing that keeps me most busy is involvement with Lucee. So.
Wow. Well, I appreciate you doing that, Patrick. I'm sure a lot of other CFers do as well. So you mentioned that there may not be backwards compatibility, on major releases. I'm kind of curious why you decided to do that, because I know Adobe ColdFusion, they try pretty hard to have backwards compatibility with at least the prior 2 versions.
Yes, right. So the bottom line is that generally speaking, open source software project versioning is different from corporate software versioning, and it has to do with with the commitment, basically, that the controlling entity, in this case it's a private corporation, Adobe, has to its customer base versus what you expect out of an open source software project. So if you look at most open source software projects use semantic versioning, and if you look at the way most of them operate, it's this way versus the corporate proprietary software way. So we're really just following the crowd, so to speak. We're following semantic versioning as closely as we can, and that's just that's a normal thing with semantic versioning open source software projects. The major version releases are generally speaking not backward compatible. A recent example, we are heavy into Angular JS in the post Flash, post Flex world, post rich internet application world. I know you know a whole lot about that. Like everyone else, we had to pick a new platform for client side, building clients at the client side of the applications. And so we standardized on Angular pretty well. Well, Angular 1.1 or 1.2, whatever the last Angular release is, in the 1.x version is not compatible with 2, or 2 is not compatible backwards. So it's a big jump. If you want to go to Angular 2, it's a pretty big jump, and they're not compatible. So that's an example from the open source world.
And so if people don't want to make that big jump, is the prior release still supported for some period of time, or how do you work that angle?
Yes, so then all of a sudden we do pretty much adopt the typical corporate stance of supporting the last 2 releases. But if 6 is going to take a while to get out the door, and then 5. whatever is your most recent release of 5.x, then you're supporting 6 and 5. But you see what I mean? That support lifecycle is going to last a long time out into the future. So I think it ends up being mostly the same timeline as, say, Adobe ColdFusion. They've got like it's somewhere between a 5 and 10 year support plan, depending on what kind of support you're talking about, the level of support, from when they release a major version of ColdFusion to when they'll no longer support it. And so ours would be pretty close to that, I think, in the final analysis.
Okay, well, that's good to hear from anyone considering trying out Lucee 5 today, that it's not, they'll be supported for years to come. Yes,
the good news about Lucee, again, is that the technical and financial stewards of Lucee are all really, really experienced web application engineers. We've built really, really significant systems, all of us, and supported them or upgraded them. And we've worked with the biggest companies, especially at Webapper here. I mean, we worked with the biggest ColdFusion customers in the world. So when larger companies talk to us about their needs, we are intimately familiar with that. We've been working with these kinds of entities, whether it's the federal government in the United States or international banking institutions or large universities. This is, makes up a good chunk of the Adobe ColdFusion customer base. We've worked with them all. And so we bring that understanding of large, complex projects to Lucee. And so we certainly know how to be able to support those kinds of customers, and also lots and lots of small systems too. I don't want to overstate the size of the customer we're going after with Lucee, but everybody's welcome.
And I was curious, is there I know some open source software have feature voting where users get, a certain number of currency items they can vote for new features. Maybe you get 10 widgets or whatever, and you can put them to wherever feature you want to get improved. Is there something like that in Lucee already, or down the pipeline? Or
yes and no. There's not an actual currency of sorts or a point system or anything like that. But one of the metrics that we watch most closely, so Lucee has a Jira ticket system for Lucee development. It's an open system. Anyone can get in there. And one of the features of Jira is an upvoting mechanism. And upvoting on individual tickets is one of the things that we pay most attention to. So if we get a ticket that gets created and it gets, say, a dozen or 24 upvotes in, say, the first week, that ticket is going to be worked on first, period. And so we do have that feedback loop in place. What we need to do then is apply that to the product roadmap and the longer term product strategy. We don't formally have that in place because, again, the official sort of committee level interaction between Lucee Association Switzerland and the community is the TAG, the Technical Advisory Group, which is on hiatus right now by intention. And so when we bring that back into existence, we're going to have this whole formal voting mechanism. We just want to make sure that it's smooth so it doesn't become bogged down. And so it can actually produce results, right? So there's nothing worse than having a committee that doesn't produce any results, right? So in the meantime, yes, we have the upvoting mechanism in Jira, and that's really the best way to give us feedback. I would say too, though, that the other, you mentioned a kind of a voting currency. If there is an actual currency that you can use, which is the sponsored fixes, right? So Lucee, of course, will be free and open and to be used for free as for time immemorial. And you can also, it's open source software, so you can fork it and customize it yourself. So that sort of free, like free beer, is going to be there all the time. But of course, we're a nonprofit, and so we do respond to finances just like anyone else. And so that paid fix thing, we've had an increase of that here in 2017. And I actually love seeing that, because those are the organizations whose systems are so important to them that even though they've made a commitment to Lucee and free software, they will nonetheless invest in strategic ways to get things done faster or tailored to their specific needs. And that's just something that you can only have with Lucee. So that we really love being involved in those sorts of projects with customers.
I think that's great that you have that. If someone's really committed and they have some money on the line in their own system, it's probably a mission critical system. They can, sponsor a fix, and it not only helps them, but it helps the whole community by, adding new features or fixes into the language.
Yes, exactly. Those things typically are committed back to the core of Lucee. It's a case-by-case basis, but yeah, those things can certainly improve the lot for everybody, because they'll eventually get access to whatever the fix or enhancement was.
And then did you have to do anything to Lucee to get it to run on Amazon Web Services, or does it just run out of the box? Or
no, it just runs out of the box. Lucee has a really lightweight install. It's got a really small footprint for what it is, for being it's still an application server, right, with a huge library of runtime services and function libraries and all that good stuff. But one of the things that we like about it is that it's especially scriptable. So for example, you saw that there's been a Lucee Docker image for a long time now. Adobe still doesn't have a Docker image out. And that reflects some of the differences in scriptability of the two platforms. The other way that Lucee is much more friendly to the cloud is in the obvious way, right? So you can, if you scale up 20 servers versus 2, you still pay LAS the same amount of money, which is $0.00. So there's nothing scalable that's as scalable or quite so attractive as a form of scalability as financial scalability, right? I forgot to mention one other exciting thing that's coming. We are going to have an official Lucee server image in the Amazon cloud. We're actually a little late on that, to be totally honest. It's my fault personally that we're late because Webapper is a member organization and as the only Amazon partner, official Amazon partner in LAS, we took that on and we just haven't been able to get that out the door yet. But that's going to be a gold image. It'll be in the AWS marketplace. And you will be just like if you've ever spun up server machinery out of the AWS marketplace. These are optimized, pre-optimized gold image type servers, and it's point and click easy to get them spun up into your environment. And things like updates can be included as well, so you keep the engine patched and with the latest and greatest updates. So that official Lucee AMI, Amazon machine image in the AWS marketplace will be coming soon. We're hoping to get that out the door this year with everything else that we have going on with Lucee. And we're hoping that for example, it's as easy as pie to get a WordPress stack up and running, pre-built and pre-optimized out of the AWS marketplace. And we don't have that yet for Lucee. So that is coming soon. And we're hoping that that gets a lot more people spinning up Lucee servers, even on the free tier in AWS. So you can even be running these servers without even any Amazon costs, and of course there are no Lucee costs. Eventually, along with that, we do hope to have a paid version for people who want to contribute to Lucee for a few pennies per hour, every hour that they use Lucee, and that would then just support the Lucee Association. So it'd be a nominal hourly usage fee. And so we hope to get one of those out the door too after we get the free AMI into the marketplace. But that's another really exciting option too that's coming with Lucee.
Great. Well, I'm excited by that. How does having a gold image compare to, getting images through the Ortis tool for getting images? The CommandBox. I was spacing out on the name there.
Yes, CommandBox, right. It would be quite similar, only that you don't have to use CommandBox. So you have to use CommandBox, which is one member organization's tool set, which is great. Ortis is easily one of the most exciting member organizations in Lucee. They kind of remind me of Webapper 10 years ago. They're just hungry, and the technical work that they're doing is just so incredible. So we're huge fans, but it is just their tool set. So of course, not all customers will want to use that tool set. It would be just almost as simple, probably not quite as simple, but the main thing, because CommandBox is just a great tool set. The main similarity would be that it's all done for you.
Okay.
It's pre-installed, it's pre-optimized. If you're spinning up a server that has 4 gigs of RAM, your heap, for example, would be pre-optimized. So you don't have to figure out how to do that yourself. Or if you're spinning up a tiny little server with 1 gig of RAM, of course you can have a 4 gig heap for that server. Or if you've got monster servers. And depending on the web server that you're using, there's of course a bunch of different ways to connect Adobe ColdFusion or Lucee to a web server. So all those things would be done for you. So it would be quite similar to CommandBox in the sense that it's done for you and it takes away a whole lot of the work for you. But then it would just be Amazon machine images without CommandBox installed, and then point and click. So having them in the Amazon marketplace is what makes them point and click easy, almost as easy as CommandBox. Again, not quite that powerful, but you can, through the Amazon console, then you can just point and click, spin up these servers, and it's all done for you. And then inside the server, all the Lucee stuff and web server stuff's done for you too.
So let me ask a dumb question here for people new to doing cloud hosting on Amazon and Lucee. If with an Amazon virtual server, you can bump up the memory anytime you want, right? And you could have Amazon itself decide the memory needed bumping up.
Well, yes and no. So Amazon's particular implementation of virtualization does not allow for like the dynamic adding of RAM.
So you'd have to create a new instance and add more RAM on that.
Right. So they're prepackaged instances. What is almost trivial is creating an image, basically cloning a server. And from that image, then you can just point and click spin it up onto a larger server type with more RAM or more CPU. And this can, by the way, all be automated and all be scripted. So your auto scaling configuration can say, if the server is struggling because of memory issues, that's possible, especially if you use CFusion, because CFusion writes all the internals of Adobe ColdFusion or Lucee into the Amazon CloudWatch service, which is the service that is monitoring all the different indicators of performance and stability and so forth. So one of the things you could have CFusion write into CloudWatch is a memory contention problem or a memory starvation problem, and then your auto scaling, your launch configuration could react to that by saying, well, don't spin up another server with the same amount of RAM, spin up another server with double the RAM. So it's not quite just dynamically adding RAM, which some virtualization systems can do, but the result is the same. It's fully automated and scriptable and so forth.
And then how would the Lucee admin settings take advantage of that? Or you'd have to have, how would you tell Lucee when in that new server that it was going to use more RAM for its JVM, for example?
Right, so that's the scriptable part. So you can make all of this fully scriptable. That's one of the most interesting ways to describe Amazon Web Services is that it's infrastructure as code. All it is just a bunch of software. So whether or not you use the console, and the console sort of seems like it's controlling servers and load balancers and disk drives and all that, the fact of the matter is that it's all just software. So when you use the Amazon Web Services console, that's just making API calls to the same API that you could, write custom software against to control your Amazon infrastructure programmatically, via software. So in all of that is where you could say, spin up this Lucee server as a larger server instance with more RAM, and at the same time make the heap allocation larger so that it spins up a larger heap. So I see your point. If you spin up Lucee on a server with 16 gigs of RAM, but the heap is still 2, it's going to starve just as quickly as it did, right? So that's a good point.
Cool. So you mentioned CFusion, which is a product that's been out for more than 10 years now, and helps you optimize your ColdFusion apps. Tell us what's new in that. Is there cloud support in CFusion now, or?
Yeah, so CFusion actually turns 13 next month. August of 2004 was when we sold our first CFusion license. And so we were the first to market with a monitoring tool built specifically for ColdFusion systems, and that was one of the signs of our deep commitment to the platform. So as part of everything else, this whole evolution that I had discussed, we saw the ColdFusion, the CFML world evolving, and Webapper, of course, had to evolve as a company. That's what you have to do when you're in business, right, is evolve. So we evolved into the Amazon cloud. We brought Lucee along with us. And then there was another piece to the puzzle as far as Webapper is concerned, which was our CFusion product. And we'd actually fallen behind it a little bit on updating that. So after we got done with all of this Amazon and Lucee work and getting ourselves set for that, then we started redeveloping CFusion. So CFusion 5.0 released in May of 2016, 5.1 later that year, and then we're just about to release 5.2. 5.2 is due out in next month, August of 2017. So the two most interesting new features in CFusion relative to the Amazon cloud, of course, since we had made this commitment to the Amazon cloud, including bringing Lucee in and having that as an option for CFML systems, we were obviously pretty likely to make CFusion Amazon cloud friendly too. So I'd say the two of the biggest new features, there are some others, and we could probably have a whole other podcast about that, which I'm happy to do. But the two features I highlight are Amazon CloudWatch integration. So I mentioned that. So CloudWatch is the monitoring system in Amazon, the monitoring service, and it's incredibly sophisticated, incredibly customizable. And what you can do, so it monitors all the typical metrics, right? CPU and network throughput and memory and a bunch of other metrics, but it's also customizable. So you can write custom metrics into the CloudWatch system. So what we did is we created a new feature in CFusion that takes, so CFusion of course has, the first achievement of CFusion was to expose all the internals of first Adobe ColdFusion and then Rilo Lucee. And so that used to be a black box, we used to call it in the old days. You had no idea what was going on inside that process. And of course that made it almost impossible. You had to be almost part, artist, witch doctor, and part scientist to try to figure stuff out. And we figured out a lot, but obviously being able to see all the metrics was a big deal, which is why we named it CFusion, right? But that really is only the first step. Once you can expose all the internals, so we're talking about thread pools and thread states and all the memory percentages and all the timings, how long are the requests running, what are the averages, what are the long running ones, how many records were returned from this query, all of those internal metrics that are the key metrics that relate to performance and stability. Once you expose those, then of course, very soon thereafter, you've got to do something about it. Otherwise, you're just exposing your problems all day long. Nothing's ever going to get fixed. So we've actually built some problem-solving intelligence into CFusion, and there are some other features. But most importantly is we take all of those CFusion metrics, and if you're in the Amazon cloud, you can write those metrics into CloudWatch. And then CloudWatch can be watching that. So at this point now, CloudWatch is watching ColdFusion's or Lucee's internal metrics. So that's a very in-depth form of monitoring that's very ColdFusion or Lucee specific. And then you can have this sophisticated scaling system react to it, adding more servers, more memory, sending alerts, all the things you can do with CloudWatch. So CloudWatch integration is one, and then we also, the cloud licensing model is finalized in CFusion 5.2, which is coming out next month. So that is officially an hourly licensing mechanism. I think the price we're going to target is 10 cents an hour. Don't quote me on that. But anyway, one of the things that everyone likes about Amazon is that you can use resources by the hour. And if you just use them as needed like that, the pricing is very friendly. So we wanted, CFusion's just perpetual licensing pricing is still very, very friendly. It's still only $400 per server for enterprise. So that's a huge amount of functionality for a very low price. We do have a lot of customers that still buy the perpetual licenses because it turns out to be the best deal for them. But then we have a hourly licensing model now for Elastic systems too. There are just so many Elastic systems out there. Like, for example, there are a lot of customers that are running fully Dockerized containers, fully containerized Dockers. I'm not sure what it is. They're running Docker containers in production. And so, of course, the general idea of a containerized environment is that the containers are like cattle. They're not like pets. That might be an off-putting example to some people, but the point is they're disposable and no longer, you no longer want to love them for 20 years like we used to do with old servers, right? And like we do with pets. So the point being that if you are following this model and your servers are expendable, then you're going to have a lot of elasticity, and so you want your licensing model to be friendly along that way. So if you're going to run this server for 22 hours in a month and then it dies and goes away, you only would pay for 22 hours of CFusion licensing and then throw it away, and then some other server gets in there and starts using up the licensing. So long and the short of it is an hourly licensing model that's another AWS specific feature in CFusion.
Well, great. It's exciting. So let's just pivot to some slightly different questions I'm asking everyone on the podcast, which is, why are you proud to use CFML?
Right. So we have a practical answer to that, and then a somewhat prideful, if you will, answer. We really feel like our answer is the same. In our opinion, a lot of the best ColdFusion developers have a very practical answer to this. We're proud to use it because any engineer is proud to use best of breed tools, right? And CFML has always been, in our opinion, a best of breed tool for what it does for web applications and other kinds of things you can build in CFML. So we certainly believe that. We use it, we continue to be proud to use it because, like any craftsman, we're proud to use the best possible tools. But we also have this history, almost a personal history, in that all of us here at Webapper, almost all of us, go back to Allaire Corporation. And so, of course, we have a lot of pride in being part of that history. I mean, the Allaire brothers and ColdFusion being the first application server to market in 1995. Everyone in the CFML community should have a lot of pride in being part of this movement, which is now 22 years old, right? So that's another reason that we're proud.
So, sometimes I read online about ColdFusion dying, and I've been reading it so long, it seems like a little crazy that people keep putting that out on blog posts and whatever. But I'm more interested in how can we make CF more alive. So what would it take to make ColdFusion more alive this year?
Yes, right. So part of this is an answer that won't win us any points from Adobe, but more support of Lucee. I think there's a very strong argument to be made that the most exciting things that are coming out of the CFML world are happening with Lucee. The pace of development, the implementing of best practices and from the broader software world. More of this is happening with Lucee. Of course, Lucee is more friendly to cloud environments just because of the fact that it's an open source, free open source software product. But looking more broadly and including Adobe ColdFusion, Adobe continuing to support a 10-year product roadmap. That's very, very exciting. Continuing to make sure that Adobe ColdFusion Summit is still the biggest and best funded and best attended conference every year. Despite the fact that we've talked a lot about how we've moved in the direction of Lucee in recent years here at Webapper, but nonetheless, we're very happy to see that ColdFusion Summit do well every year. So it's more of the same of everything we're doing here at Webapper, more cloud, more Lucee, and more of continuing to push into new things for CFML-based systems. And I think the biggest part of that is going to continue, the biggest growth area is going to continue to be Lucee. Obviously, the move towards open source software is a worldwide trend. I mentioned those 800 or so cryptocurrencies. Those are all open source software projects, right? So I mean, if we are freeing money from the clutches of central banks and government meddlers, right? That's all based on free open source software. So it's just one example of how this is obviously a big, big trend. So we're happy to see that trend unfolding with for CFML-based systems, and we're going to keep pushing real hard to make sure that's successful.
Great. Well, I'm excited about all the things you're doing there to help out CF. So I know you were speaking at CF Objective last weekend, or just before the weekend. What did you enjoy at the conference? Tell us your experience.
Yes. I personally was actually sort of a guerrilla sponsor, a guerrilla speaker, if you will. I did not have a speaking slot, but something like 8 or 10 or 12 other Lucee members had slots, or there were, I think it was like a dozen different slots by Lucee members. So it was great to see a lot of the tried and true, the old stalwarts from the Adobe ColdFusion, the long history of Adobe ColdFusion. Ray Camden was there, and he had a great speaking slot. I sat in on his slot on Node.js, which is one of my favorite tools these days. He did a slot on Node.js for ColdFusion developers, so it was a great comparison of how you do it in CF and how you do it in Node. Great to see Ray there. Adam Tuttle was there, and some of these older names. And then, of course, a lot of the Lucee folks were there. So that's one of the things I like most about CF Objective is I think that it's the most, let's say, inclusive. Not that Adobe is exclusive in any way, but in terms of Lucee attending conferences, the CF Objective and probably CF Camp are the two that attract the most Lucee people. So it's great to see the mixture of both Adobe ColdFusion and Lucee people all under one roof. And so I enjoyed that too.
Great. Well, I really appreciate you telling us all about ColdFusion and AWS and Lucee and all the neat things in CFusion. And thanks for all the wonderful things you do in the CFML world, Patrick.
Yes, it's my pleasure anytime. And we're just happy to be continue to be committed to CFML-based systems. And it's still our passion. So we're still going strong, 16 years and counting here at Webapper.